December 5, 767, of the New Holy Era, the forces of Camellia rebel against their allies in the kingdom of Hortensia. Duke Rugus Camellia transforms into a werewolf and slaughters the king of Hortensia and a few of his Knights Templar, while his Camellia Knights and a force of magical monsters wreak havoc across the capital. Maurice Baudelaire barely manages to escape after losing an eye in the battle, delivering Fernando Albert's sword to his son Alfred, as well as a boy named Marius that he rescued. Hortensia manages to survive the rebellion, but with the king dead and the Princess Mariel missing, Hortensia's next king is a young boy named Charlotte. 2 weeks later, after mourning their dead relatives, Alfred and Marius begin training under Maurice to get revenge on Camellia. 4 years later, Alfred and Marius join their first real battle with Hortensia's soldiers, but find themselves under attack by a skilled Camellia archer unit led by Roy Baccarat, who easily beats Alfred and Marius with his custom bow, but retreats when Maurice steps in. A floating island called Magania is rumored to grant a wish to those who reach it, but is also rumored to be the source of the monsters that appeared in Hortensia during the rebellion and still roam around the countryside. Flashbacks to the night of Camellia's rebellion show Maurice spiriting Princess Mariel away from the castle with the help of fellow knight Georg Dalmas. Georg tells him the new pope of the Orthodox Church, Alexei Baldebran, secretly planned the coup behind the scenes so he could place Charlotte on the throne and rule Hortensia through him. As Maurice fled the castle, he asked Mariel to cut her hair to make it easier to hide her from their pursuers, which she reluctantly did. In the present, Alfred and Marius hear rumors of a shapeshifting monster terrorizing a nearby village. A young boy gets lost in the nearby caves, as Alfred and Marius go to rescue him. However, they get lost in the labyrinth, so Nonoria Folly goes to rescue him herself. She manages to find the boy, but both of them are attacked by monsters, and are saved at the last moment by Alfred. Even though Charlotte is the current king of Hortensia, his underage status allows the Pope to appoint himself his legal guardian. Georg calls upon Maurice to investigate a quarantined village full of monsters that appear human. Maurice takes Alfred and Marius to the village, where they run into former bounty hunter Deflot Danois and a village full of zombies. Deflot does not trust them until Maurice informs him the bodies were not the dead villagers that Deflot grew up with. Deflot reveals that he was born in the village, and his father was the head priest who hated that he left, but the Pope quarantined the village to stop the spread of a plague, so the priest led the village in prayer until he was the last man alive. Soon after finding the priest's diary, the ecclesiastical knights threaten to burn what is left of the village, when a giant monster appears. Marius uses a flower that Deflot left to hold the monster long enough for the group to finish it off. Later, Deflot decides to join the group as they decide to find out if Georg sold them out to the church. With Camellia no longer allied with Hortensia, the Dairahan Empire has begun probing Hortensia's defenses. Alfred and his group come across a merchant caravan with everyone brutally slaughtered except for 2 Dairahan children. The group decides to take them to the Hortensia capital. At the capital, Georg tells Alfred and Maurice that he had nothing to do with the ecclesiastical knights trying to kill them. Suddenly, the main cathedral is attacked by monsters summoned by the 2 children from before, Saria and Elva, who demand the Pope hand over a relic that Rugus instructed them to find. Alfred and his allies break through the demonic ghosts surrounding the cathedral, and manage to subdue the twins with the Pope's help. Suddenly, a giant dragon, the salamander of Maganian legend, breaks into the cathedral, but the Black Knight Didier Viardot quickly cuts it down with his large weapons. The salamander takes the twins and escapes the cathedral, later settling down in Camellia territory before transforming into a woman named Thirja. Meanwhile, Georg tells Maurice that the Pope and Didier were the ones with the authority to send the knights to burn the village without his knowledge. After Leon Olivier died during the rebellion, his daughter Adelheid was set to inherit the Olivier dominion. However, the church instead used the newly installed King Charlotte to make Olivier a vassal state under Hortensia. Alfred's party tries to meet with Adelheid to leverage Olivier against the church, but Didier arrives with several knights to arrest Adelheid for alleged treason against Hortensia. Marius and Deflot plan to fight back, and Alfred hesitates to raise his sword against Hortensia, when Camellia suddenly stages an attack on Olivier's port. Didier's knights, Alfred's party, and Adelheid's forces all join together to repel the invaders, including Roy, who reappears on the battlefield. However, Roy mysteriously retreats with the rest of his forces midway through battle. After the battle, Alfred convinces Didier not to arrest Adelheid for now. Elsewhere, Duke Rugus explains that he simply wished to fake an invasion through Olivier, to build up Adelheid and drive a wedge between her forces and Hortensia, but Roy and Thirja believe there was another motive behind his decision. Marius tells Deflot about a legend of how a princess was protected by a giant. Alfred and Morris then show up, revealing that a young woman claiming to be Princess Mariel has been spotted on Juin Island. When they arrive on the island, they witness the young woman addressing her volunteer army. Afterwards, the young woman learns the church is looking for her. Meanwhile, Saria and Elva have also arrived on the island. When the young woman, whose real name is Marie, is later confronted, she reveals she and her childhood friend Jim lied about her identity in order to give the island hope. As such, Marius decides to help her. While they are alone, Marie tells Marius how Jim has always looked out for her. She then decides to reveal the truth to everyone, which Jim agrees with. When they do so, they are attacked by Saria and Elva. However, when the fake giant approaches Marius, it disappears. The next day, Marie and Jim thanks Alfred's party for helping them. Additionally, Marie asks Marius to relay a message to the real princess. Alfred, Marius, and Deflot head to Kokon village after they hear a rumor that it is now a ghost town. When they arrive there, they learn that the village has been controlled by the church for nearly 2 years. Just then, a former priest named Adele shows up. He takes the party to Knoll Hospital where he asks them to help him liberate the patients of the petrodermic plague. However, Alfred is reluctant to act thanks to the power the church has. While they are underground, they are attacked by zombies. Once they reach the basement of the hospital, they are confronted by Dr. Graff and his bodyguard Gaston. Graff admits that he has been conducting experiments on the patients under the Pope's orders. After they defeat Gaston, Didier arrives and he discovers Marius' true identity. A month later, Alfred and Deflot are at the Fairy Tour prison where they encounter Lucan Deluche, a friend of Alfred's, who reveals that Marius will be executed. Sometime later, Morris shows up to aid in Alfred and Deflot's escape. Meanwhile, Marius is interrogated when Didier arrives, revealing he knows she is really Princess Mariel. He then admits that he locked away a portion of her memories when she was young. Just as Marius is about to executed, she is rescued by her friends and allies. Afterwards, Marius reveals her true identity to Alfred, which causes him to swear his allegiance to her. After being briefed on the current situation, Rugas declares that a turning point of Hortensia's history is soon approaching. Meanwhile, Adelheid gives a speech telling the anti-church coalition to assemble in Olivier. Sometime later, she takes Alfred's party to meet a witch named Lacroix, who reveals witches are Maganian sentinels. She then uses her power to have Mariel relive her past prior to the rebellion. Mariel learns that her father's attempt to bring her mother back to life using a relic ultimately led to the tragedy that befell the kingdom. When she is given the opportunity to use it to undo the tragedy, Mariel refuses. Once Mariel awakens, Lacroix reveals the Pope has the relic and Mariel passed her trial. Thanks to this information, the party decides to head to the capital. Elsewhere, Therja reports this to Rugas. A couple of weeks later, Mariel rallies the Liberation Army. On their way to the capital, they are ambushed by Saria and Elva. As Didier informs the Pope that the Liberation Army is heading to the capital, Flegel Dreadnought arrives to let them know that he is ready for battle. Meanwhile, Roy drives Saria and Elva away, revealing Camellia will not take any hostile action toward the army. Just then, they are ambushed by a unit of ecclesiastical knights carrying unknown weapons. After defeating the knights, the army learn the weapons are muskets. The next day, the army notices the elite squads of the Royal Order are blocking their path. They then discover Flegel is the commander of said squads. Once the battle commences, Camellia forces team up with the army. As the elite squads are being overwhelmed, Flegel reveals he removed his grandfather Balthasar, causing his allies to abandon him. Later on, he challenges Alfred to a duel, which Alfred wins. Afterwards, Flegel is shot and killed. 3 days later, the Liberation Army arrives at the capital. While the army is battling the ecclesiastical knights, Balthasar shows up, revealing he survived. Elsewhere, Rugas, Saria, and Elva head to the capital. Back in the capital, Alfred, Deflot, and Morris learn Jorg is fighting against them. As such, Morris decides to take him on. Meanwhile, Didier confronts and overwhelms Alfred, Deflot, Mariel, and Adelheid. Just as Alfred is about to shield Mariel, she distracts Didier long enough to allow Alfred to defeat him. Afterwards, it is revealed that the Pope is secretly the king's son. Later on, Alfred, Mariel, Deflot, Morris, and Adelheid are confronted by their deceased loved ones. 4 years earlier, the king attempted and failed to resurrect his wife. The Pope then manipulated him into making Rugas angry, which ultimately led to the kingdom's tragedy. Back in the present, while Alfred, Morris, and Adelheid are fighting their loved ones, they learn that the Pope is controlling their bodies. As such, Alfred and Adelheid reluctantly kill their fathers in order to set them free. Afterwards, a wounded Morris decides to stay behind while Alfred and Mariel go ahead to confront the Pope. Elsewhere, Nonoria and Ku find Deflot once his battle is over with. When Alfred and Mariel arrive at the Pope's location, he reveals to them the motivation for his actions. During the battle, Rugas provides assistance, which allows Alfred and Mariel to defeat the Pope. However, Alfred is mortally wounded when they discover Rugas was the werewolf who slaughtered everyone. Sometime later, as Mariel is giving a speech to the citizens, Lacroix reveals Mariel committed a taboo when she invoked a hidden power to resurrect Alfred.